Stand up.
Hey, it's Thursday, so I'll be hosting a hangout tonight at 8 p.m. I've got a great show coming up for you. I'll be joined by one of the winners from Tuesday night's primaries. It's Chris Jones, Dr. Chris Jones, to you. Hopefully, Congressman Chris Jones in November. Great conversation with Chris, which is coming up at 1 hour and 23 minutes into today's show. And before that, I welcome Jonathan Larsen to the show. He's an investigative reporter who's worked with some of the greatest broadcasters and journalists in the country throughout his career. He's now doing his own thing, and it's going great. He's got a daily newsletter called The Fucking News, and he's got his own investigative reporting, and he got a huge story the other night when he found out that a whole bunch of military commanders were basically telling their soldiers that they were fighting to bring Jesus back, rapture catalysts. I don't know. Anyway, great conversation with Jonathan Larsen and Chris Jones coming up in today's show. Jonathan and I start at 42 minutes, but I've got your headlines and your clips as I do every day. Today, no exception to the rules. Sometimes there are exceptions to the rules, but not today. Let's get to those headlines. Hope to see you tonight at 8 p.m. and also in April 9th through 12th in Las Vegas. Podjam is going off. Tickets are available at the top link of each day's show notes, so go check it out. Hope to see you in Vegas. Hope to see you tonight at 8 p.m. And now let's take a look at what happened yesterday. Top story, of course, day 6 of the U.S.-Israeli war on Iran. The conflict escalating as regional tensions rise. Iran has threatened global shipping in the Strait of Hormuz, and fighting is spreading across multiple fronts in the Middle East. Further afield, a U.S. submarine sunk an Iranian warship off the coast of Sri Lanka, killing at least 87 sailors and rescuing 32 others, apparently. This is the first time a sub, I think, has launched a torpedo and sunk another ship like this since World War II. People are bragging about that. It's crazy. Getting uglier by the day. According to Iranian state media, the death toll from 5 days of U.S.-Israeli attacks has reached 1,045 with more than 6,000 people wounded. They're looking at their new supreme leader, who's the son of their old supreme leader, and I don't know, lost a lot of his family in that bombing. Not sure he wants to step in to that role. Iran's Ministry of Foreign Affairs has accused the U.S. and Israel of strikes on 33 civilian sites across the country. Both countries say they don't do that, but they have reportedly hit hospitals, schools, residential areas, and much, much more. There's now a Kurdish ground offensive, signs that thousands have launched a ground offensive in northwest Iran against the Islamic government. Iraqi Kurds could be joining the fight, apparently. Also yesterday, the Iranian Republican Guard announced the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, where Iranian threats to attack ships have brought maritime activity to a virtual standstill. Whole bunch of oil tankers just kind of hiding, eating whatever food they have on their ships. I saw Aaron Burnett reporting this and hoping for an escort from the United States Navy. Also, Spain has refused to join the war. The Iranian president commended Spain for refusing to allow the U.S. to use its bases for the war. And our General Fatten has now threatened to cut off all trade with Spain as a result. Gulf nations have been brought in. Iran's counterstrikes disrupting oil flows across the Middle East. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, and more. In Israel, their military has announced a new wave of strikes against military infrastructure in Tehran. U.S. and Western officials stated that U.S. and Israel have successfully destroyed a significant portion of Iran's military capabilities, with air supremacy achieved. They said Israeli and U.S. jets are able to fly uncontested over Iranian territory. At least 10 people have been reported killed by Iranian ballistic missiles in Israel. And that is the roundup that I've got for you for what's going on over there. Should mention in terms of what's happening here. Yesterday, Senate Republicans blocked a war powers limiting law as the Mideast crisis widened. The Defense Department named 5th American killed in the Iranian attack on Sunday, released the name of another soldier believed to have died in the same incident. State Department said that a charter flight was returning to the U.S. with Americans wanting to leave the region. Oh, good. They got a flight out. But the big news here in Capitol Hill regarding Iran was Republican lawmakers blocking a measure that would have limited our lunatic leaders' power to continue waging war against Iran without congressional authorization, even as the conflict expands into a wider international crisis. And now you have several Democrats wavering on whether or not they would support funding to continue the war, which was horrific to see. Most Democrats have criticized the U.S. attacks. But yesterday, Politico published a report featuring prominent Democrats who say they oppose the war, but they might be open to funding it. What? You got Alyssa Slotkin of Michigan, Jack Reed of Rhode Island, Jeanne Shaheen of New Hampshire, Chris Coons of Delaware, Pete Aguilar of California, Tim Kaine of Virginia, Gary Peters of Michigan, Ruben Gallego of Arizona, all said to some extent they would also maybe be open to funding this war, even though Ruben Gallego said it's a dumb war. Meanwhile, Senator Chris Murphy said he did not think there would be much support to continue funding the war. Good luck. What Democrat is going to vote to fund an illegal war, said Murphy. He's one of the leaders in the Senate, so we'll see what happens. But the reason I named all of those senators is because maybe write them a letter or put pressure on them. I mean, that would be way across the line. I wonder if anyone listening right now or anyone can fathom funding this war. And if so, by all means, make the case. I'm open to hearing it, but I can't. I certainly can't. All right. Send me an email, standupwithpete@gmail.com. Say, make the case to me. Okay. Also on Capitol Hill yesterday, a lot happened. The Secretary of Homeland Security and patient of a blind plastic surgeon, Chrissy Noem, was back in front of legislators yesterday. It was the Senate yesterday. It was the House the day before. We also heard from DUI hire and Christian Rapture architect Pete Hegseth, and he said that the U.S. media was making too big of a deal of American deaths in Iran in that war. I'm paraphrasing, of course, but let's see. Specifically, he said during a briefing at the Pentagon, criticized the media for supposedly focusing too much on the dead soldiers in an effort to make Trump, quote, look bad. He suggested those deaths were getting disproportionate play compared to the military's successes. What? Who decides this? He said, when a few drones get through or tragic things happen, it's like front page news. I get it. But the press only wants to make the president look bad. But try once for the report to reality. What? I can't even imagine what he thinks it's supposed to look like. But obviously the media covers when service members die in combat, much less in training missions, a tremendous amount. Some newspapers regularly ran multi-page features commemorating the fallen of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. The names used to roll up the TV screen during the Vietnam War in the nightly news. I mean, it's crazy, and I'll have some more reaction to it coming up. But wait, there are still more headlines. Yesterday, the Justice Department, after calls by Donnie D. Cups to investigate the former president, Joe Biden, he scrutinized whether Biden had his aides broke the law in using the auto pen to sign presidential documents, but was ultimately unable to move forward with the case, according to several people who the New York Times heard from. Again, the headline is Justice Department under pressure from Trump fails to build auto pen case against Biden. So it looks like they're giving up on that, which would be really big news. Another failure, and we should have paid no attention to it, or very little attention to it from the start, I should say. Big news from the House Oversight Committee, who yesterday voted to subpoena Attorney General Pam Bondi to answer questions over the Justice Department's handling the files regarding Jeffrey Epstein's sex trafficking investigation. 5 Republicans joined Democrats to support the subpoena of the Attorney General, proposed by Nancy Mace, by the way. This is a sign of continued frustration amongst conservative women, specifically in the House, with the Justice Department's review and release of a tranche of documents related to the disgraced financier Jeffrey Epstein. So we'll see what happens with that. But this is a pretty big story that she's been subpoenaed to have to answer these questions. Hopefully it takes place in public, but we'll have to wait and see. In other Epstein files related stories, the Wall Street Journal reporting that there are 47,635 Epstein files offline still being reviewed. Among the unreleased documents, guess what? a woman's unverified allegations against Trump himself. So that is a very important story as well. Also read that, guess what? We've launched military operations now in South America again, this time in Ecuador, a joint military operation with the Ecuador government military targeting what U.S. is calling designated terrorist organizations in the country. The military released no details on the operation, suggested in a statement it was an extension of strikes carried out by our regime against suspected drug trafficking organizations in the region. So there's that. Just another military operation just buried under 1,000 other headlines. In Rhode Island, there's a blistering new report about abuse in the state's Catholic churches. How about that? Who would have guessed it? The Attorney General in Rhode Island found 300 child victims over the past 75 years. Would have thought that number is higher. Probably is. I didn't read the article, but I still like to see that they're doing that. Good job, Rhode Island. Lawmakers, a new type of nuclear power plant backed by Bill Gates, who's all over the Epstein files, good friends with him, has received a federal permit. The first reactor approved in years. That is big news in energy. What do you think of nuclear energy as a solution? I'm sure that'll be fine. Speaking of energy, in Cuba, with fuel running out because of a U.S. blockade, the country's tourism industry is collapsing. A very slow or rapid death, depending on how you look at it in Cuba. That is going to be another next headline. We have to learn a lot. If you know anybody in Cuba, Cuba experts, send them my way. And finally, in Texas, 2 people were left dangling from a 1,000-foot tower when their balloon crashed into it. Usually I don't mention stories like this, but I'm very anti-hot air balloon. I've made the case. Firefighters save those people, but still, I don't want any part of that. I'd rather jump out of a plane than go in a hot air balloon. Oh, Lou Holtz died. 89 years old. To me, he'll be remembered not as Notre Dame's football coach, but as a guy who helped Donald Trump get elected. So that's the shitty part of his legacy, at least that I know of. All right, well, those are the headlines that I found for you all day long yesterday. Nobody does a more comprehensive headline search, shares them the way I do here, so you can just run right through them in your morning, wherever you are, whether it's on the rowing machine like Sean, or out for a walk like so many of the rest of you, or doing your dishes, making food, whatever it is, driving. Obviously, I am happy to have you along the ride with me today, and I've got a whole bunch of clips I want to share with you before I get to my guests as well. Let's start with laughs, brought to you by Jimmy Kimmel on ABC's Jimmy Kimmel Live last night, where he hit the president real hard in a lot of ways, including this.
There were primary elections in North Carolina, Arkansas, and Texas yesterday. Democrats are hoping to win their first Senate seat in the Lone Star State since 1988. James Tallarico won the primary there last night. He beat out the author of Bleach Blonde, Bad Built Butch Body, Jasmine Crockett. Tallarico will now face the winner of a runoff between the incumbent, Senator John Cornyn, and his opponent, Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, seen here dying before our eyes. Ken Paxton, this guy has quite a list of accomplishments. As Attorney General, he faced 20 different articles of impeachment. He was indicted for 3 felonies. He's been sued by the SEC. He's threatened with disbarment. And his wife, a woman he started a church with, divorced him for cheating with a Senate aide. Oh, you didn't forget the Senate. With a resume like that, you could run for president of the United States. Of course, Paxton is tight with Trump because only the best people. Democrats flipped a state legislature seat in Arkansas yesterday. That makes more than 24 seats in various state legislators they have flipped since Trump took office last year, whereas the number of seats that have gone from blue to red now totals 0 nationwide. I'm beginning to see why Trump dislikes these elections so much.
All right, Jimmy Kimmel getting us started. Very funny. Now let's go to Capitol Hill, where Governor of Minnesota Tim Walz was hauled in to testify about Medicaid, Medicare fraud in Minnesota, which is manufactured in many ways. I mean, there's obviously a huge amount of fraud there, and we can talk about it, should talk about it. But worth noting, it is a lot worse in the chairman oversight chairman's state in Louisiana and plenty of other states. Anyway, I thought this was a fun clip from that hearing yesterday.
Continues to tell lies about our electoral system, claiming that he's won all 3 times when he lost all 3 times. I think he has people around him who were trying to find quotas around immigration, and they saw a perfect storm, if you will, that included some Somali folks and a whole lot. If we're going to condemn folks, there's no Somali folks in the Epstein files.
Yeah, love it. Well done, Tim Walz. And when you're in the minority and you're a Democrat in this case, and Republicans are manufacturing all kinds of bullshit arguments and pulling in this case, witnesses like Tim Walz, what you do is you point to what is really a scandal and call out the red herring. And that's exactly what Congresswoman Ansari did at that same hearing yesterday. I thought this was also very good performance.
Mr. Chairman, it's outrageous that this is what we're choosing to spend our time on the Oversight Committee. At the first one...
Fraud?
At the first one, yes, fraud, because let's talk about fraud. At the first one of these ridiculous series of hearings on Minnesota, I brought up the dozens of horrific ongoing corruption scandals in the Trump administration, but I know we're very scared of Donald Trump, so we won't be talking about those. But those are the things that we should be investigating on the Oversight Committee. Now we have another one. The Department of Justice was caught red-handed withholding explosive and credible FBI witness interviews of a woman who accused Donald Trump of sexually assaulting her when she was a minor. Shouldn't we hold a hearing on that? Shouldn't Pam Bondi be here, forced to testify why she is violating the law that Congress passed, the Epstein Files Transparency Act, nearly unanimously, along with this committee's subpoena? But since the Republican majority instead wants to have a conversation about Minnesota, then let's do that. The Trump-Epstein regime's deployment of thousands of ICE agents, Donald Trump's personal secret police force, is a fascist disgrace.
Yes, indeed, a fascist disgrace. Well done, Congresswoman. And now let's go take a listen to what happened to Kristi Noem yesterday. And I say what happened to her. It's just, they lit her on fire. A lot of metaphors today, obviously. And yesterday I got an email from my friend Cindy who said she thought that the men were particularly hard on her, and she has no remorse or feelings for Kristi Noem, but wanted to call out what she thought was sexism. But I think it was the selection of clips, because I think the women were very hard on her yesterday in the Senate as well. But she was testifying, as I said earlier, in front of the House yesterday. Let's start with Congressman Joe Neguse. Thank you, by the way, to Kim Nyborg, who sent me this clip yesterday.
Find an address that's registered for this company. Do you know where that address is? Where is Safe America Media headquartered?
I don't know.
I don't know either, Madam Secretary. We can't find it. We can't find a website. We did find an address that's registered for this company. Do you know where that address is?
Is there a problem with this contract?
I'll tell you about it.
According to
Madam
law,
Secretary, the
address
is registered to a political operative. Madam Secretary, the company, and then I'll give you an opportunity to respond. The company is registered to a political operative in Virginia. Do you know, just by way of example, whether this company that received $143 million in taxpayer dollars, has it ever done work for the government before?
I don't know. I can't.
The answer is it has not. And do you know why we know that? Because it was incorporated 8 days before this contract went out. You want the American people to believe that this is all above board?
Yes,
that $143 million of taxpayer money just happened to go to this one company that doesn't have a headquarters, doesn't have a website, has never done work for the federal government before, and is registered apparently or attached to a residence from a political operative. And of course, one of the subcontractors of that contract, as you know, is a political firm that's tied to you back when you were governor of South Dakota. The reason why I ask these questions is that this is taxpayer money. And I presume, I don't know this for a fact, but Senator Tillis noted yesterday the way in which your agency is blocking the Inspector General from 11 different investigations that it is trying to conduct. I don't know if this happens to be one of them. I certainly hope it is, because eventually the facts will become public in this regard.
Indeed. Indeed they will. I thought that was good. And then a reporter from the Midas Touch, Pablo Manriquez, caught up with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez outside the Capitol last night and asked the larger question about this corruption and fraud and what to do about it.
Congressman Kristi Noem admitted finally to the House, to Congressman Neguse, that the $220 million advertising contract was actually a no-bid contract, directly contradicting what she told the Senate yesterday. What do we need to do to get to the bottom of these egregious sort of expenditures coming out of the Department of Homeland Security and the lies that we've had to cut through to get to this truth?
I think at a certain point, we are going to have a collective effort to really examine and explore who has lied under oath and who has perjured themselves under oath and pursue serious investigations to that end. I've seen plenty of hearings, of course, in Congress. There are, of course, moments where people may misspeak. That's a different matter. What we have seen from Kristi Noem lying about what she has done at DHS, to Kash Patel lying about what is and isn't in the Epstein files, to secretary and administration official down the line, there is no mistake that there is cover-up after cover-up of illegal activity happening in this administration, and the only way that the law means anything is if we prosecute those who violate it. And I want this administration to start adhering to the law as quickly as possible, and that's what my advice would be to people, because we all swear an oath to the Constitution of the United States. We do not swear an oath to the president. We do not swear an oath to any one individual. We swear an oath to the Constitution. And our obligation to the law is clear. And if Kristi Noem and people like Kash Patel and people like Pam Bondi, who's also in violation of the disclosure on Epstein files as well, is that if they want to violate the law, there are supposed to be consequences. These are people who call themselves alleged law enforcement officers. And the message that they're sending is that they can cover up for pedophiles, and they can cover up for street executions, and that they can cover up for some of the most heinous crimes that are happening in the United States of America. And that cannot be acceptable from any party.
Yes. Cannot be acceptable at all. And she is real smart, and I love that thoughtful take as always. So good. All right, now let's go back to Kristi Noem yesterday being grilled. Here is Congresswoman Sidney Kamlager-Dove. I'm not familiar with her, but I thought she went for it, and rightfully so. If you're having sex with someone that is working for you, it's really bad for a lot of different reasons when you're in the government, and even when you're not, but especially when you're in the government. And Congresswoman Kamlager-Dove of California goes right for it. And I urge you to stay through the crosstalk when they're both talking at the same time for a very long time. It's annoying, but it's worth staying for, I think.
So, Secretary Noem, at any time during your tenure as Director of Department of Homeland Security, have you had sexual relations with Corey Lewandowski?
Mr. Chairman, I am shocked that we're going down and peddling tabloid garbage in this committee today.
Reclaiming
and
my
ma'am,
time.
one thing that I would tell you is that he is a special government employee who works for the White House. There are thousands of them in the federal government.
So reclaiming
and
my
is
time,
an advisor,
Secretary, it is
has
okay for
no,
you to be
no
offended
authority
by the
to be
question.
making any
it is
decisions.
okay for you to
has
be
no
offended
authority
by the
to
question.
Be making
but it
decisions
is also a real question.
So what I would say
and
to
you should be able to
is
answer
that
the
what
question
we do at the Department of Homeland
clearly
Security every single
and without
day,
any hesitation.
every single day is to protect
if
this
someone
country
is
and
asking
to make
if
decisions.
You or any federal official is sleeping with their subordinate, that should be the easiest. You should be wanting to answer that question.
Is garbage?
Because it is not about
it is
your sex life.
that you have brought
it is
that
about
up.
your judgment.
So that kind of garbage
It is about
has been refuted
reclaiming
for
my
years,
time so
and
that
you
I
need
can
to
hear myself.
recognize
Time belongs to the gentlelady from California, but it'd be nice if you would let her respond.
I will. I want to let you know it is about your judgment and decision-making. It is about the 260,000 employees that work under you that want to make sure that you are giving information and making decisions clearly. It is about conflict of interest. It is about a national security risk. Department of Homeland Security was created right after 9/11 to protect the homeland. And DHS has circulated an internal bulletin to law enforcement partners warning that the conflict of the war we're in could inspire lone actors or small-scale cyber activity inside the United States, according to a memo obtained by ABC News. So American lives are at risk. The people who work for you are at risk. And they want to know that the person at the top, you, are making decisions clearly, without any sort of cloudiness, and that they're your decisions because you're the secretary who was confirmed. That's what this is about. Saving the lives of Americans and not costing them millions of dollars, and not having a secretary who's compromised in her decision making.
I think what's important there is that she actually never gave an answer to the question. The answer should be obviously no. Well, Jared Moskowitz was not going to let up, even though he's a man here. And, well, here it is.
You've called Corey Lewandowski a special government employee. I understand what government means. I understand what employee means. Okay, but I don't know what makes him special. Now, I want to give you an opportunity to answer on the record to Ms. Kamlager-Dove's question. I know you said it's garbage, and it may be, but I really think you need to say the word no into the record so that you can clear that up.
I think the ridiculousness of this and the tabloids that you are quoting and referencing are insane. And this has been something that I've refuted for years, and I continue to do that.
So it's a no.
What I would tell you is,
we can move on. Hold on.
What you're doing,
we can move on. I'm not going to belabor it.
This is what you do.
Hold on. I'm not doing any of that.
Liberal left.
Okay.
Is you go off and you attack.
All right, it gets worse from there, and he never gets a no, though. He never gets a no. So are the rumors true? I think so. And one more. This is Congresswoman Rebecca Balint. She represents Vermont, and I think she has the final and most important word to the disgraced Kristi Noem.
And I just want to say, this alone, this conduct alone is impeachable. And I want you to know that Americans will get accountability for the damage that you have done, for the lawlessness of aspects of DHS, for killing innocent Americans, for terrorizing children. They will get accountability. And you are the secretary of DHS for now. And you think you're immune from accountability. But I promise you this, one day, he is not going to be president anymore. He is not going to be in charge. And when that day comes, we will still be here. And we will still be seeking accountability. And in hearings like this, we are going to continue to prove your guilt.
Well, there you go. One quick clip from Fox News, because what were they talking about, of course? The Clintons, hopefully the Epstein files. Jessica Tarlov does a real good job in this minute or so I thought I'd share it before I get to the Iran audio.
There's a new precedent now. Now it's the Clinton rule. Now you can be held in contempt if you don't comply with a subpoena. And when Donald Trump is out of office, the beginning of 2029, then he can be called. Having Hillary Clinton come in was just part of a sick GOP ritual fascination with humiliating this woman. She is your number one villain, still talking about crooked Hillary from 2016. She had nothing to do with this, and honest Republicans would admit as such.
You don't know she had nothing to do with it because we don't know where the 30,000 emails are. We don't know where they are. They might exonerate her.
It's a funny joke like 10 years ago, but it doesn't work now.
I don't think it's a joke. I care.
Her time was wasted, once again, asking about Pizzagate and UFOs. And if you want to talk about first ladies that actually had contact with Ghislaine Maxwell, look at Melania Trump's email to her. Very chummy. And then Ghislaine writes back calling her Sweet Pea. Talk about Howard Lutnick.
Ghislaine wasn't at her daughter's wedding.
As a +1 for somebody else.
+1.
So what? Okay. Ha, ha, ha. There are pictures of Melania and Donald, Ghislaine, and Jeffrey Epstein, multiple of them. Howard Lutnick is in trouble. Howard Lutnick said that after he found out in 2005
Larry
that Epstein was a
Summers
bad guy. Yeah, he's lost his job. That's the point.
You're falling into my point. You're tangling through the wires.
You have a cabinet secretary who is lying over and over again about his involvement. And there was a photo of him on the island, not with his nannies, his wife, and his kids, walking around with Jeffrey Epstein and 3 other unidentified men. And the DOJ took that photo down. And only because there was outcry over that did they put it back up late last night. Ro Khanna says that they have the votes.
Ro Khanna should not be trusted on this.
And Thomas Massie.
And Thomas Massey as well.
Okay.
But
All right. Greg Gutfeld is such a piece of shit. It's unbelievable. No honor, no principle, no morality whatsoever. Just gross. Okay, moving on. Let's check in over at CNN where Caitlin Collins was talking to Senator Chris Murphy yesterday and hear several clips regarding the war in Iran, which are very, very good. You want to listen to these.
Is it clear to you, based on what we've heard from the administration, why the United States is at war with Iran right now?
Of course it's not clear. I mean, this is incompetent and ham-handed leadership. They all have different reasons for attacking Iran. I guess what I think is that it's just so disgusting to listen to the President of the United States be waxing and waning poetically about the drapes that he's buying. Well, there are 6 Americans who are dead. There are 6 American families who are about to bury their children because of a war of choice that no one in this country wanted, an illegal war. I mean, you also played this clip of Secretary Hegseth saying that the president has all the latitude he needs in order to carry out a conflict with no end. The disdain that these people have for the Constitution, for the idea that it's only the people that consent to war, is just absolutely shocking. So we've heard no coherent explanation. We've heard no goals for what Iran is supposed to look like at the end of this mission. And the region is spiraling out of control. American casualties are mounting. Billions of dollars in taxpayer money is being misspent. This is a growing crisis of incoherence and incompetence at the White House.
Yes, indeed. Good stuff from Chris Murphy. Continues to lead, I think, in the right direction in the U.S. Senate. Here is podcast bro Andrew Schultz, cousin of my old producer, Alfred Schultz. They actually even look alike. Anyway, Andrew's a very famous, very influential comedian and podcaster. And here is what he is telling his podcast bros on the couch and his massive listening audience.
The only reason it looks like we're in there is just because Israel needs it.
Yeah.
Right? And then naturally Americans are furious about it, right? Because we're like, how the fuck does this benefit me? I can't afford to pay for college. I can't buy a home. I can't pay for health insurance. And we're going to spend billions of dollars on a war in a country I can't even point out on a map. Mm-hmm. How is this beneficial to me?
Yeah.
So that's the message that I think a lot of people are coalescing around. Make of it what you will. Here is Congressman Thomas Massie on the House floor yesterday, ripping it up.
This administration can't even give us a straight answer as to why we launched this preemptive war. The president says we had to strike first because an Iranian strike was imminent. Meanwhile, the Department of Defense conceded there was no evidence of an imminent Iranian strike. Some told us this war was about nuclear weapons, but 6 months ago, we were assured our last strike on Iran decimated their nuclear program. So which is it? I think the most candid answer came from the Secretary of State, who told the press that Israel forced our hand and dragged us into this war again. And that truth is the very reason why it is Congress that must decide war. If American lives are to be risked and American blood is to be shed, that decision must be debated and voted on by the representatives of the American people. And that debate is meant to be arduous. And that vote is meant to be hard.
All right. Well done, Thomas Massie. I love it. I love that. I thought it was great, but nothing was better than James McGovern, who left it all on the table with all the receipts. I love this guy. I have for a long time, and this is the best clip I've got for you today. House floor yesterday, representing Massachusetts' 2nd District, the great James McGovern.
Speaker, nobody is defending the Ayatollah. There is no love lost for a brutal government that sponsors terror and murders their people. Iran has been doing this for decades. Everybody knows that. And so my question is this. Why wasn't Donald Trump in favor of regime change until this weekend? Why did he campaign on swearing he would never send American kids to fight and die in the Middle East? Republicans can't answer because they were against war with Iran until exactly the second Donald Trump decided to go to war. And now they're all running around sounding like neocon lunatics. America can't take this level of gaslighting. I went to the classified briefing. There was no imminent threat. I guess unless Republicans want to redefine the word imminent to mean stretching back 47 years. This whole thing is just so transparently built on lies. Republicans went from imminent threat to regime change to nukes back to imminent threat in the last 24 hours. I'll tell you what this is, Mr. Speaker. This is Iraq 2.0. I still remember the lies about WMDs. I voted against that war too. At least George Bush had the decency to lie to people's face. And by the way, no congressional vote can legitimize this because there was no imminent threat. There was no UN Security Council resolution. So this war is illegal no matter what you want to call it. And it's not Donald Trump's kids that will have to go fight and die for their draft-dodging dad. It's not the children of the billionaire Epstein class. It's working-class kids who are going to put their lives on the line. Shame on Republicans. I'm sick of this BS. We're spending billions of dollars a day on a war, and we can't even get Republicans to join us to expand health care in America. How the hell is this America first? You guys broke your top campaign promise. Good luck with that. I hope the defense contractor money was worth it. Shame on you all. The mask is off. You're all just a bunch of
Your time's expired.
He said you're all just a bunch of pathetic neocon warmongers there at the end. So good. Love James McGovern. Got to get him on the show. Got to reach out. Make it happen, Pete. All right, now I want to get to a little more sober analysis. The former Secretary of State Antony Blinken sat down with my friend David Gura over on Bloomberg and made a couple of interesting points, which I thought were worth sharing with you, because whether you agree with Blinken or not, I thought this is interesting analysis. He's a smart guy.
David, I think we're looking at a couple of things going forward in terms of where does this go and how does this end. And it seems to me that there are two critical factors to look at. Markets and munitions. Markets. Where are the oil markets? Where's the stock market? Where's the bond market? I know President Trump is very attentive to those. And if they go in a southerly direction and stay that way, or in the case of oil in a northerly direction, that's going to be possibly a limiting factor. Then munitions. There's really a race on to figure out who expends their munitions first and fastest. The Iranians put us in a position where we've used up a lot of interceptors to deal with defense, or even our offensive missiles to take out their launchers, or conversely, did they run out and we still have what we need? I don't know the numbers here. I'm not privy to that, but it is something we have to be very, very attentive to, because these things are not in infinite supply. The production times are very long. And, of course, we're also using in many cases, very expensive weapons to take down $20,000 drones. That's not a good equation if you keep that going over time. What I'm worried about, one of the things I'm worried about, and this gets to the second and third order consequences, is we so deplete our arsenal, and it takes a long time to rebuild it, that puts us in a disadvantageous position when it comes to, say, a China or a Russia. All of those things need to be factored in. And, again, it's one of the reasons why if you're going to undertake something like this, you've got to make sure that you've factored all of that in. And, again, it really should start with explaining to the American people why you're doing something, why it's necessary, why now.
Do you see an off-ramp anywhere at this point?
I do, in the sense that, one, as I said, I think the off-ramp will be governed by this question of munitions and markets. Mm-hmm. And then what is that off-ramp? I think the president may simply declare victory. He'll say, got rid of the Ayatollah. We diminished or degraded or destroyed their nuclear program. Again, we did the same thing to the missile program. We did the same thing to the Navy. And as to the regime, well, over to the Iranian people. Good luck to them. Hope they succeed. And if they don't, it's their fault. If they do, we'll take the credit. How Iran responds to that remains to be seen.
All right, there you go. Antony Blinken, former Secretary of State, with my friend David Gura over at Bloomberg. And now let's wrap it up with some more comedy from Stephen Colbert last night on The Late Show.
Folks, I really didn't want to start the monologue by talking about the war, but in honor of this administration, I went into this without a plan. So we got to talk about it. I guess we got to start with that. I say war because it sure looks like a war, and Trump keeps calling it a war, but Congress never declared it a war, and MAGA was promised no new wars. So the White House sent out a list of talking points to all the congressional Republicans, telling them in no uncertain terms that if a reporter asks, can you promise the American people this will not be a long, drawn-out war, the answer to give is, these are targeted major combat operations. So it's worse than a war. It's a war that got a thesaurus for Christmas. Okay. So it's not a war. It's not a war. Don't call it a war. Got it. I'm sorry, Mr. President, you were saying?
I think you probably want to speak about war rather than this, but this is very important. This is very important, and we're doing very well on the war front, to put it mildly. I have to go back and look at the war.
Oh, no. Oh, damn it. You know you're not supposed to say it, but that just puts the word in your brain. It's like when your boss has a huge pimple on his nose, and you're like, don't talk about the pimple, but as soon as he walks in, you go, hi, Mr. Pimple. Oh, zit! No surprise. Everybody thinks that this stupid terminology is stupid. So today, Speaker Johnson tried a new tactic. It is a war, but it's not our war.
Iran has attacked 3 of our U.S. embassies in the last couple of days. Okay, those are sovereign territories of the U.S. They have declared war on us. We're not at war right now.
Folks, I totally buy it. Babe, she declared sex on me. I simply reciprocated with a targeted heat-seeking moisture missile. One thing's for sure, this not a war is not a stopping anytime soon, because yesterday, U.S. Central Command said America's conducting 24/7 strikes into Iran. Is it good when you're bombing for as long as 7-Eleven is open? Though I will say, the Monterey Jack Chicken Taquito is a war crime. You know its slogan, I've been on this roller grill since we killed Saddam.
All right, there you go. Colbert Last Night Late Show. Some laughs for you here at the end. And now it's time to get to my guests. But reminder, I can't do this daily show without you. Please subscribe. Get a paid subscription. Patreon.com/PeteDominic. Tell your friends. Bring in a couple of people to get paid subscriptions so that we can keep it going and keep the lights on and keep doing this on a daily basis. All right. Let's get to my guest today. Coming up, he won in the Democratic primary in Arkansas 2nd District. Chris Jones, great conversation with him yesterday. But first, I caught up with Jonathan Larsen, who I haven't talked to in a really long time. He's had a very impressive career in journalism, working in a lot of around a lot of television networks and big anchors from Dan Rather to Chris Hayes, Lawrence O'Donnell, Rachel Maddow, Anderson Cooper, and even helped launch Air America with Marc Maron on the roster. He's since then done original reporting at the Young Turks, was laid off there in 2024, and now he's doing his own thing over on Substack, where he's doing some great investigative journalism and got a huge story from Mikey Weinstein over at the Military Religious Freedom Foundation about how all these guys had been commanders in the military telling the U.S. troops that the Iran war is for Armageddon and a return to Jesus. It's a great piece. It's really important. JonathanLarsen.Substack.com. And he's got a separate Substack for a daily newsletter, which is great, and it's not safe for work. It's called The Fucking News. TheFuckingNews.Substack.com, which has thousands and thousands of subscribers. You should subscribe to both of those Substacks. Jonathan Larsen, Chris Jones both joined me yesterday on YouTube Live, Substack as well. Hope you're subscribed at Stand Up with Pete. Let's do it first, right now, with Jonathan Larsen. Huge story yesterday, a follow-up today. Actually, when was this posted? A couple days ago. Huge story a couple days ago. And this is regarding the United States military being told by their commanders, some of them, that the war in Iran was an Armageddon, a return for Jesus. And I've been talking about this issue for years, and Jonathan is on the case. Lots to talk about. Welcome to the show. Thank you for sitting there through all that rambling opening.
Are you kidding? Sitting there through someone talking about how important my story is?
Yes.
Please.
take it away.
Well, it's a big story. It's a big piece. It matters a lot. We need to talk about it. Before we get to that specific story and issue and some of the other things that you've been writing about, I just want everybody to go subscribe to your stuff on Substack, jonathanlarsen.substack.com. And then you've got a separate Substack for your daily newsletter. Tell me a little bit about that and why people should read it. The fucking news.
Thefuckingnews.substack.com. Thanks for the opportunity to promo.
Yeah.
Basically, my hope with it, I started it with the hope that we could sort of reel back MAGA people in, but that was before Trump got reelected. So now it's a little bit more of like a cheerleading kind of thing, give people reason to hope, to laugh. And also, to be honest, a large part of it, as you know, I used to be a producer in TV news, and story selection really matters. It determines what we're focused on as a society. And so I really do try to like curate out the stupid, silly season stuff and focus on where are issues that affect us and affect our future systemically and are also leverageable, are actionable, so that people can see, oh, here's what needs to change. And I throw in some cursing.
I love that, and I think that's a really good kind of editorial standard. I think a lot about, we all do, story selection, who we're going to talk to, what our aim is, what our purpose is. And I think mine's probably similar in terms of, I've always said, I think the tagline is like, I talk about the issues that matter most to you, your family, your community, your country, and your planet. And so we talk about any number of range, personal issues, but also everything in the news. And obviously I don't really talk about anything pop culture, sports, music, anything. I'm not good at talking about any of that either. What do you think is like, how do you decide kind of what's the most important? Do you focus mostly on domestic, international stuff? How do you kind of, and what do your readers and listeners and everybody think of how you choose those stories?
Well, it's funny because my readers, newsfuckers as I call them, they're incredibly kind to me, and so I don't get a lot of sort of even good faith criticism. It's all good faith. Thank you for being there.
I love that. I get the same. I mean, have you become friends with anybody that is a reader, a fan, a supporter of your work? I have so many friends that listen to the show, like really legitimate friends I talk to and see and visit and know their families.
Yeah, I don't want to say no because there might be someone out there who's like, but I thought we were friends.
Oh, you've got boundaries. You've got boundaries. That's healthy. That's healthy, Jonathan. I do engage. I think it's really important to engage. I'm in the chat, I'm in the comments, all those kinds of things. But also, I don't get, I'm not a super interesting guy. I don't get a lot of questions about my personal life or anything like that. Oh, see, now that's where, I'm fascinating. I think that might be. I've had I'm really fun to be around. I'm a great guest, I've recently learned. Let's talk just real quick. I mean, you've had a really impressive career. You've written and produced television news. You've worked with Dan Rather, Keith Olbermann, Chris Hayes, Lawrence O'Donnell, Rachel Maddow, Anderson Cooper, Marc Maron, and all kinds of other people. Do you want to spill some tea just to make it sexy and interesting? And I don't mean gossip, just like, I guess, something positive. Like, who is somebody that you really admired that you work with that wasn't, entirely about, a lot of these people are faces on TV and you know what that can do to somebody's ego.
Yeah. I do think one point that I make a lot or try to make, and I love the question. Thank you. The one point that I try to make is that I've worked with more than one person who was described as a monster. And in my experience, when people get themselves into trouble, it tends to be because of poor management, right? No one starts off that way. And so I think it's really underappreciated that these aren't like inherently bad people or inherently mean or whatever. But when any of us lose sight of what boundaries or restrictions even look like, it's not that easy to remember, how am I supposed to behave again? What are other people? So I think that's an important thing, is not to just like write people off. And I should say also, in terms of the whole monster thing, like my experience with these people did not reflect that. So there was one anchor I worked with quite early on. I was warned was a monster. And my first experience with them, they were like, great job. Thanks. And I sort of came to see, like he's surrounded by really well-paid people who can't do basic things that are part of the job. So yeah, he would get frustrated sometimes. So I think it's important for people to recognize that there are systemic issues in terms of.
So it sounds like you're blaming. It sounds like you're blaming the victims, Jonathan.
No, I'm blaming the people. The people who are supposed to protect the victims. The
people who say that the person was a monster. You're like, well, I didn't see it.
I did see it. I usually
wasn't
didn't see
to me.
Towards me is what I'm saying.
Right.
But the bigger point is that the higher ups, the people who are paid even more, whose job it is to corral these people, often don't, which is just begging for trouble. I will say, I worked with Chris Hayes for a couple years doing the weekend show, and we're not really in touch so much anymore. But he was just like a real sort of paragon for me to look up to in terms of what it meant for me to be a leader as executive producer, and just to it's good every once in a while to have the experience of working with someone who's clearly smarter than you are.
Oh yeah.
I think that's a little healthy at times. And I will throw in, by the way, Dan Rather, nicest guy in the world.
I'm certainly glad to hear that was your experience with him. I worked with him for several years at SiriusXM, not every day, but I did a bunch of different programming with him. He did my show. I got to be on his show. We covered the RNC kind of together or adjacent to each other. I got to know him really well. We share a birthday, October 31st. And he was an angel, a sweetheart, just a great guy who I really enjoyed being around. So I'm glad that
and
was
of all the people who had reason to be bitter.
Great point. It's a really good point. Yeah. And I love what you said about Chris Hayes too. I'm a big fan. I've never met him. I think I interviewed him once, like over the phone for one of his books, but I like that show. I like the way he does it. And like you said, he's a real smart guy and tries to be a journalist, which I think is great and important. So you went from kind of corporate and cable news and network news to the internet news. One of the biggest outfits there is the Young Turks. How was your experience there? Have you talked about that?
Have I?
Well, I mean, I don't know. Do people, I ask if you had a bad experience or anything? I just my question is more about like you go from corporate media to a smaller outfit. There's a lot of trade-offs, obviously, in that way. And now you're doing your own thing, like me. Yeah. And this is, I guess, maybe this is a boring question for people watching. To me, it's really interesting to see how the industry has changed and how, if we've changed with it, if we've adapted, if we're still even in it.
Yeah, I think I had sort of a similar experience going from corporate to indie when I went to help launch Air America Radio. So there were definitely birthing pains, shall we say. At the Young Turks, I was brought in to oversee something new, which had already kind of started before me. So there were some issues there. I don't know how many of them were my fault. You don't always get to know, but eventually I found it to be a very positive experience, and I got to hire and work with journalists who actually are still friends. Ken Klippenstein, I haven't been in touch with him for a while, but your viewers probably and listeners probably know him, and some others as well. Tiwa Chang, who is a legend in New York journalism. I got to work with him. I just saw him last week, so that counts. So yeah, there are definitely trade-offs. I've always said, whether I was in a corporate or alt environment, I will take autonomy over resources any day.
That's really interesting. That's a really interesting kind of, there are always trade-offs no matter what you do, but I had a lot of autonomy at SiriusXM. So that was a weird, I didn't have to make that choice too much. Obviously, I didn't have as much as I do now, not working with anyone, working for myself. But All right, I could talk about media and your journey forever. I want to get to the news that you're covering that you have a lot of really interesting thoughts, insights, and reporting on. Specifically, let's talk about what is going on in our military and in our government, because you've been covering this for a really long time, too. The intersection between Christian nationalism and different industries, but especially government. Of course, Jeff Sharlet's work and so many other people talking about the family in Washington, D.C. You've covered that. You've known about how they've been intertwined in government for a really long time. I think, to be fair, getting stronger and stronger in every branch of government and media as well, obviously. But, man, now they're running the show. The most Christian nationalist militant types are running the show. Pete Hegseth at the Department of Defense had his preacher Doug Wilson, and we've been talking a lot about that guy, and you know all about it. So let's just talk a little bit overall, generally, how you've seen things change in this Trump 2 version in terms of the Christian nationalist influence in the administration, and I guess most frighteningly, at the Department of Defense, that they changed to war, but we're not having a war. They aren't.
I'm sure they'll make up their mind at some point. I mean, look, I would say the central dynamic here is similar to what we've seen in other spheres, right? Which is that the grown-ups are gone. Marco Rubio used to be considered one of the League of Extraordinary Grown-ups. That has passed quite quickly. Yeah. He's also had one foot in the sort of the family, the Fellowship Foundation in that world as well. But yeah, it's basically there are very few checks on that movement now within the U.S. government. So, for instance, I'll give you an example. And by the way, there are some Democrats who continue to abet exactly this. So one, for instance, in January, Congressman John Moolenaar, he chairs a select committee on China, the Communist Party influence, and he took a congressional delegation to El Salvador, among other countries, and part of the trip was members of Congress who are within the circle of influence of the Fellowship Foundation. They went along as well. And the trip just happened to coincide with the very first El Salvador National Prayer Breakfast. And so less than a year after we learned that President Nayib Bukele was torturing people from the U.S., in addition, by the way, to 4 years of suspending civil rights and multiple credibly accused violations of human rights, the National Prayer Breakfast was a forum for Bukele in which both parties, members of both parties, and I wrote about this back in January if people want to check out the names, members of both parties got up there, talked about what a great job Bukele was doing, talked about the miracle. They basically cloaked the Bukele administration regime in God. They basically said this is a miracle that's been pulled off with God's help. 1 month later, who was up on stage speaking at the National Prayer Breakfast here in the U.S.? Bukele, again, getting that affirmation from the core of the U.S. administration now.
And
what
that guy,
that years now appears to be getting fast-tracked, and they're building a network. They leverage their political connections to get people like Bukele to become more religious, or at least performatively religious, and talk in those terms, speak about his government and government generally in those terms. So that's just one example of something that's happening under the radar, but affects the trajectory of nations going forward.
It's a really important example. Talk to me about the difference between actual religious beliefs and performative religious beliefs, and how we can ever know what people really believe. Because I don't know, I think sometimes, just maybe to help me sleep, I try to convince myself that our leaders don't actively want to bring upon the rapture and have the now ability to because they can give the orders. It's just a really uneasy feeling to know that our military leaders especially believe and buy this shit. So talk to me about how you split that hair, if you can, to know what's performative and what do they really believe.
Of course, on a philosophical level, we don't get to know, right? Which is the sort of existential horror of human existence, which is why I'm laughing, I guess. But the point is, I think, to answer your question, Trump, clearly not one of them. His performative token gestures are laughable and revealing, right? This is clearly not someone who's ever, dropped to his knees at bedtime for any wholesome purpose.
Or anything but a cramp. He doesn't, there's no possible way that anybody could believe that he himself believes in anything other than himself. He, recently said he doesn't think he's going to heaven in the weirdest moment. That was one of the weirder moments of all time for him. And we were all like, we know why. We're pretty sure some of the reasons, but also, what is it that you want to tell us? But so go ahead.
I'm listening. But I also think that the left generally and the media more narrowly for years now have made a really bad mistake about assuming that it's all charlatanism, that it's all fake, that everyone's a grifter. And I will say that I have spent years going through Fellowship Foundation, the people who make up the Fellowship Foundation. It's a very cellular, disparate organization, but I've spent time reading their blogs, watching videos that only have 6 views, that kind of thing. And I have absolutely zero reason to believe that any of them are faking this. When you look at the totality of their lives, you see the absence of an attempt to cash in very often outside the boundaries of enjoying the rewards of being in that world in the first place. But these are generally, in my experience, not grifters. My personal guess, Mike Johnson, not faking, right? If you look at the trajectory of his life, he's spent a long time in the trenches pursuing this stuff, doing this stuff, saying this stuff. So if I can't prove that it's genuine.
He worked for that organization, which is one of the most well-funded law firms.
Alliance Defending Freedom, I think.
ADF, Alliance Defending Freedom. They bring all kinds of lawsuits that have often gotten to the Supreme Court that have rolled back rights and so on. They're really right-wing Christian nationalist organization. But, I don't know. You brought up Mike Johnson. So a lot of people think that he's gay, and a lot of us know that a lot of people who are gay that are in the closet do this performative religious nonsense. Lady G, ring a bell. Just talking about politicians alone. I just read about Denny Hastert. He's in jail because he was a pedophile. He was the Speaker of the House. I don't know. I don't. He's got some weird shit though. That Mike Johnson. He's got that whole relationship with his daughter where she has to promise him she'll save herself.
As an atheist, I'm biased here, but I see nothing contradictory between weird shit and genuine religious belief. Those are not contradictory things.
No, absolutely. That's hilarious. And I agree. But also, I'm looking at the actual contradictions. If he is in about the sexual stuff, it's just we all just fall back on this criticism that you're acting like a virtuous Christian, but you're protecting a pedophile, or you're waging a war, or any number of things. And these are, it's like shooting fish in a barrel, I guess, to find someone being a hypocrite about what their religious beliefs versus their actions. We all do that to some extent with our moral beliefs, but this is just so egregious, I think, and so performative and so common in the U.S. Congress, especially on the right, of course. But to have it in the military,
also they have rationalizations, right? They can explain to you why it's not hypocritical. We might reject their reasons, but the brain is an amazing thing. It can get you to believe illogical things. If again, as an atheist, there's a fair amount of illogic in the story of Jesus, right? That to me is a lot harder to accept than, well, I have a good reason for defending Trump.
No doubt. And specifically, I'll just say being gay and personally, but advocating against it as a policymaker is a fundamental contradiction or hypocrisy. But you're saying, and you're probably right, they could find a way to defend that. I don't know. Yeah.
You can think I'm gay and that goes against God's word, and my higher duty is to pursue God's agenda. And so despite my personal orientation, I'm obliged by the book of whatever the book is, Leviticus. I'm obliged to ban it. People can rationalize a whole ton of stuff.
You're absolutely right.
I certainly do.
Jonathan, you have reporting that is reliant on the advocacy group Military Religious Freedom Foundation. I know Mikey Weinstein. He's a good guy. He's been at this a long time. And you've got to follow 2 pieces now up. But originally, the reporting is that a combat unit commander told non-commissioned officers at a briefing this past Monday that the Iran war is part of God's plan, and that President Donald Trump was anointed by Jesus to light the signal fire in Iran to cause Armageddon and mark his return to Earth. This is according to a complaint by a non-commissioned officer. From Saturday morning to Monday, more than 110 similar complaints about commanders in every branch of the military have been logged by this organization, Military Religious Freedom Foundation. Tell me the follow-up.
The follow-up story. Well, there's 2 follow-ups. One is it's now up to 200 complaints about that stuff from 50 different military installations. And the follow-up I did was that, and people should understand that the MRFF can't provide direct evidence of that, of this stuff, because that would implicate the whistleblowers, what they call their clients, and they would get in a lot of trouble for this stuff. So, but they do have a record of the Pentagon taking them seriously. The Pentagon's never refuted any of their claims. And today, the MRFF President Mikey Weinstein, he told me that in addition to the ones about commanders saying these things at briefings, within the first 24 hours or less of the U.S. dropping its first bombs, firing its first bombs and drones and missiles at Iran, within those first few hours, a number of commanders at, I believe, 5 installations they let word be known that they were going to have the very next day Bible studies. The MRFF received 14 complaints about 5 separate incidents of this. And we don't know what happened at these Bible studies, but it's highly unusual for them to schedule these Bible studies, which do occur. These are not, this has never happened before. This is a recurring issue within the military, but not like this. This was clearly, if you just look at the sequencing, a thing happened, and then instantly they said, tomorrow we're having a Bible study. So it seems pretty clear that the Bible studies were in response to the U.S. assault on Iran beginning. We can't know. None of the people who complained went to any of these Bible studies, but there is sort of a body of work out there, a body of theological interpretation that could allow whoever's leading these Bible studies to point to different chapter and verse and say, look, see how this aligns with what's going on now, that kind of thing. That tends to be what these politically tinged Bible studies tend to be about. And I'm not saying all of them in the military are always like that, but that's pretty much the norm when the U.S. is entering into armed conflict, especially, if not solely, in the Middle East.
You write, uncharacteristically, the Pentagon has laid low on the subject of its commanders injecting religion into the Iran conflict. Previously, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has reveled in flouting secular norms that are part of military tradition and official guidelines. Do you want to talk about that at all? You go on to...
Yeah, well, so Hegseth, obviously, he wears his religion, if not on his sleeve, then under it, I guess I would say.
Yeah, he's tattooed. He's all tatted up. Yeah.
He's most notorious, I think, for the Christian tattoos he wears, and not just Christian. These are an especially bellicose form of Christianity that he prescribes and wears. But he's also made a big deal out of, proudly, starting a monthly Pentagon prayer session, whose leaders have so far been entirely from within the silo of what he personally believes. So these are not ecumenical whatsoever. Sorry, yeah, what?
So I was saying that basically what you're saying when they're not ecumenical is they're just his strain of Christian nationalists. He's not inviting when they invite Muslims and Jews, they're also kind of the part of the rapture crowd sect of those religions that have this kind of common interest, right? Is that fair to say? If they're invited,
I don't know that we've seen that from Hegseth, but the Fellowship Foundation, there is very real sort of cohort within this, the sprawling networks of right-wing Christianity, where they do sort of cultivate and incentivize a sort of Christian nationalist friendly strain of Judaism and Islam. I even found in documents I obtained from the Fellowship Foundation several years ago, there were notes about some of the prayer breakfast guests that were basically like, this guy's a secretly Christian Muslim, that kind of thing. So yeah, this is an actual phenomenon. I guess people listening can't see the way your eyebrows just shot up.
I didn't even know what that is. A Christian Muslim, a secret Christian Muslim.
The phrase is Messianic Muslim. And basically, Jeff Charlotte, who you mentioned earlier, he, if I remember correctly, I think he was the one who wrote about this. The former leader, now deceased, of the Fellowship Foundation, the family, Doug Coe, when he had someone who was culturally of Islamic origin, who was saying, I'm ready to get down on my knees, do the surrender, accept Jesus, Doug would be like, you know what? Let's chill on that. We don't need you to out yourself in a community where you'll become a pariah. Why don't we just keep the whole Jesus thing between us? But you stay there and be safe and be our man.
I didn't know about that. I don't remember. I love Jeff. He's a friend, and I've read all this stuff, but that's crazy and totally understandable and believable.
And I could be wrong. That might not have come from Charlotte, but
well, Doug Coe, it sounds like it came from Doug Coe, who is a real player. You write, framing the Iran war as a holy war threatens to galvanize the Muslim world and potentially terror groups or lone wolf attackers against U.S. targets around the world, including American troops and civilians. So yeah, why is this so bad, Jonathan? What is so wrong with having our military leaders and our civilian leaders be overtly Christian nationalists? What could go wrong in this war with...
I sort of feel like you're asking this somewhat ironically, but yeah, I can lay out the reasons, right?
I mean, so sorry, but you can give us insight here, but I mean, like, we've been through this. We've seen this before back in 2001 after 9/11 and you write about this in your recent post. There was a lot of careful thought, and maybe not enough, about language, rhetoric. When you have a whole bunch of Christians almost exclusively running the country, you don't want to be so overt about your Christianity. You talk about things like the Crusades. I believe it was George W. Bush's administration, I forget who, really tried hard to convince one lonely, two-toothed fucking drunk in Kentucky not to burn a Quran because it would put Americans in harm's way. You're allowed to burn the Quran, but even the George Bush administration was like, yeah, don't do that. As the Secretary of Defense, I forget his name. Anyway, talk to me about how things have changed and why it matters.
Well, it's interesting because the why it matters, right, is we're talking about the difference between I'm declaring war on the regime that runs Iran, in which case now you have to fight the regime. But if you say I'm declaring war on behalf of Christianity against Muslims, now you've got a lot more enemies and people who now feel like they've been targeted. And we are very reliant. The U.S. is very reliant on a lot of Muslim countries in that area who have been exchanging fire with Iran because they don't see it as a Christian war. And if their people saw it as a Christian war, they would have a big problem on the home front. And also, every single member of the U.S. Armed Forces and every single American civilian would now potentially be seen by the rest of the world and certainly potentially the Muslim world as being part of and supporting what's been described as, if not a war on Islam, then a religious war to fulfill Christian prophecy. This is a really good way to lose friends and allies very quickly. And I think it's instructive, by the way. I did report in today's follow-up piece, the Pentagon in the past has responded to me substantively when I have asked them questions, sought comment for my stories in the past. This time, nothing. And Mikey Weinstein, the head of the MRFF, he told me that other reporters have said, we asked the Pentagon for comment, nothing. So my suspicion here, this is pure speculation, is that, look, if it were made up, the Pentagon would be very happy to say, this is BS, it's not happening. Of course, we wouldn't countenance any of this thing. But they're not even saying that, which suggests to me that there is, with combat ongoing now, with 6 Americans dead, my guess is a certain level of sobriety has settled over the Pentagon, and they've realized, you know what, maybe this isn't the best time to do the Christian victory dance.
I mean, it's also worth mentioning, you talk about whether or not the Pentagon usually returns your questions for comment and so on. I mean, this Hegseth changed the Pentagon. He kicked out a whole bunch of reporters, and reporters in solidarity with each other apparently walked out. What is the current access that legitimate reporters have to the Department of Defense, much less Pete Hegseth himself? He was out there today. It sounds like he got some decently hard questions. I didn't watch the press conference, but what is the relationship between reporters and the Pentagon today, now that there's a war?
I was actually talking about the Trump Pentagon. In the past year or so, they've been have been pretty responsive to me. The chief Pentagon spokesman gave me a statement for a story I did last year, which was very much about, is Pete Hegseth attending these radical right-wing Bible studies in the White House? And they didn't deny it, and they gave me a substantive quote. I've actually found this may be a little counterintuitive to people, but I've actually found broadly the Trump administration more responsive to me than the Biden administration was, for whatever reason. But the other thing people might be mad about me is I didn't shed a lot of tears when the White House, to some extent, and the Pentagon press corps were sort of cleaned out, because as a journalist myself who used to be a print reporter, show up with a notepad and everything, I didn't like to ask a lot of questions at the press briefings. A lot of that tends to be performative and just gives them a venue to spout off. If you're doing, and also most of the questions tend to be dumb BS that's been asked for by the headquarters back in New York. Ooh, when's this going to happen? What does he think of this? What's his opinion about this? What's his guess about that? Can he speculate about, who cares? Give me some actual facts. And my guess is that, look, we've seen no shortage of substantive reporting on stuff that the Pentagon is doing, because the reporters who are really committed to getting real information, they're going to get it. That's what they do. So I didn't cry too much. I kind of like not having that big performative.
That's an interesting. It's an interesting. Yeah, that's a really interesting opinion, and it makes a lot of sense too. So much of it on camera, especially, is performative, but access is access. And so if you get a comment and you can print it, that's journalism. If you do the work and you can source it and you can corroborate it and you can get another source, I mean, that's how it works. I mean, I'm overall concerned about access to this administration, but one might argue they give you tons of access. They throw up a comment, and it's just crazy. Transparency, obviously, we can talk about what it means when it comes to the government. And obviously, when you're covering a war, you can't just take the government's word. You can't just, arguably ride along with them. The troops that would be, what's the word? Along with them, embedded in a Humvee, in a tank. You can't report critically on them. It's hard to do. So,
morning, guys. I'll give you an important example that literally just broke yesterday. CBS News, of all people, revealed that the 6 service members who were killed in Kuwait, Hegseth described where they were working as sort of like a fortified workplace or something. It was a triple-wide trailer, and the fortifications didn't cover the roof. It was just the walls that were fortified. So guess what happened? Guess where the drone went? Through the roof.
That reporting was gotten how?
Sources.
Right.
CBS News cited unnamed sources.
Well, really important. All of it's really important. I mean, as we head into yet another war, you and I are old enough to have lived through the run-up to the Iraq War and the devastation that caused to Iraq, the chaos, the disarray, and, the reputation lost for generations of Americans, and most importantly here at home, a generation of veterans' lives destroyed. So many of them. I covered this intimately, sometimes too intimately, and got to know a lot of these guys, and I hate to see that we could be back to a similar place. But you know what? I don't think it is a similar place. The world is a completely different place. Iran is a much weaker country, and I think Trump can turn it off and say, war's over, we won, just like he did when he killed Soleimani and bombed a mountain, never put boots on the ground, 6 people died. It's basically what they did in Venezuela, and you move on right on to the next distraction from the Epstein files. What do you make of my stupid theory?
Well, I'm not sure. I'm genuinely not sure Iran is weaker. But I do think that you've definitely hit on something regarding the difference between Trump's mentality and Bush's. And I think it's something to be thankful for that Trump seems to think. Everyone's talking about how, Trump's totally, abandoned MAGA and America first and no foreign wars. Yes and no. He seems, and he could prove me wrong in 2 minutes, but so far, he seems to have a genuine reluctance to put boots on the ground in harm's way, not counting, as with those 6 fatalities, people who are within missile range, but actually having Marines storm the beaches and paratroopers dropped into Tehran. That does not seem like a President Trump scenario.
I hope you're right.
That's my take.
Yeah, I hope you're right. But, there's been, he's like, maybe we'll put boots on the ground. I hate this phrase, boots on the ground. Yeah. But everybody knows what it means. And it means.
I hate all military jargon that's just code words for I'm inside, so I must be tough.
Exactly.
I got your 6, Pete.
Yeah. Oh, I've got your, I'll be on the lead. I'm in the point.
Yeah, I'll take point.
Thank you. Thank you.
You get my 6.
Your service.
We'll be up at Dark 30.
Well, listen, man, it's great catching up with you. It's been a really long time since we connected, and I'm excited to be subscribing now to both your Substacks. What time does your newsletter hit? What is your kind of lid? This again is maybe just for me, but I do a news segment on my show every morning. I love doing it. People really like it, but it's hard to right now. Things change so quickly, so I actually finish it early in the morning. So I get up at like 4 in the morning or 5 at the latest to finish it. When does your newsletter come out? Because I'm going to use it as a cheat sheet and I'll give it plugs.
Thank you. I aim for 9 a.m. It almost never gets stretched past 9:15.
Great. Go subscribe to The Fucking News at Jonathan Larsen on Substack. Am I saying it right? Yeah.
It's thefuckingnews.substack.com or jonathanlarsen.substack.com.
Go subscribe to both of them, and I will be relying on your reporting a lot more now, and hopefully we'll get to talk again soon. I really appreciate your time today, Jonathan. Great work. Really important stuff.
Thank you so much for having me on, and congratulations for all your success with the show.
All right, there he goes, Jonathan Larsen. Go subscribe to both of his Substacks. Go to the show notes for today's show if you want to find the links easier. And don't forget to send me some vitamin N while you're there. Get outside. Send me some nature photos. You paid subscribers get to see one every morning. Now it's time to get to the other guest I talked to yesterday, the other very smart person I had access to, which is the best part of my job. And it's Chris Jones from Arkansas. On Tuesday night, he won his primary there in the 2nd District. And thank you to Salil Kapoor for turning me on to him, put him on the map for me. Real interesting guy. Went to Morehouse. He went to MIT, became a physicist. He ran for governor, lost to Sarah Huckabee Sanders, and this year he ran for Congress, is running for Congress, and just won the primary. But just his whole life is fascinating. He's married to a very, very impressive woman who was a flight surgeon in the Air Force and also is a Harvard grad herself. Now she is a physician, I believe works in an emergency room. So just a very impressive family. Got 3 beautiful daughters, I believe, as well. Anyway, love talking to Chris Jones. It won't be the last time. We had some technical issue at the end where I lost him, so it ends kind of abruptly, but we talked for almost 20 minutes yesterday. First time. I hope you'll go support his campaign, help him win in the 2nd District in Arkansas. If anybody out there in Arkansas wants to connect with him or volunteer on the campaign or help him anyway, let me know or reach out to them directly. Let's do it right now for the first time. Chris Jones. I should say Dr. Chris Jones. Wow, very excited to talk to Chris Jones because he just won his primary last night in Arkansas, 2nd District. Congratulations. Thank you so much for joining me. Really great to have you on the show.
Look, thank you for having me on. I love what you do, and I'm excited that we just won, and it was amazing.
Yeah, let's talk about the win, but just do want to tell people thank you to longtime listener, supporter Salil, who was at a fundraiser of yours. And like, this guy's amazing. You got to have him on the show. And so you and I talked for about 10, 15 minutes the other day. And I felt like, I was like, am I friends with this person? Did we go to school together or something? But of course we didn't. We didn't, because like when I started learning about you and then started learning about your wife, I'm like, I have zero business talking to someone with this much education and experience, because you're a Morehouse man, you got 2 master's degree and then another degree, a PhD. What do you got in public policy? And you're a physicist and a pastor, which means you must, I don't know, argue with yourself all the time. But I really excited to talk to you, Chris. So thank you very much for joining me. Sorry.
No, I appreciate it, man. I'm just a regular guy who grew up in a small town riding dirt bikes, and I worked at Foot Locker. So that's I'm here.
You worked at Foot Locker? You had the referee's jersey?
Oh, man, I was a front line at the referee jersey.
Everybody I knew.
I won the competition of lacing shoes. Like, I could always lace up shoes faster than anybody.
I think that's a weird thing to brag about, given your accomplishments since. Just won a primary, but still hanging on to that shoelacing triumph. Now, I had a friend who worked at the Foot Locker, and every dollar he spent and more went to more sneakers. Did you have that problem? Because you get the discount on the shoe.
Oh,
all right.
I did not. Actually, I did not. I put my money to other things, but I did often have to tell people who wanted to squeeze their size 8 foot into a size 4 shoe that this ain't gonna work.
Why would that's a thing? Why people wanted to wear?
That's a thing.
Why would you?
Well, because when you go a size up, it costs more at some level. When you go from like 5 to 6, the price jumps. And so I'm like, your kid's foot will not fit.
That is a bad place to save money on your kid's shoe size. They're still brand new sneakers. Okay. So much to talk with you. That's fine. First of all, let me just tell me about your wife. Your wife, it was a pilot and went to Harvard.
And she wasn't a pilot. She wasn't a pilot.
I saw this video.
She was a flight surgeon. So she was the doc that took care of the pilots.
Got it. Okay, because I saw her with her oxygen mask on in a campaign ad of yours, which was amazing. So she was a flight surgeon in the Navy or Air Force?
Air Force. She served in Afghanistan, so she spent months deployed, which is also why this whole foolishness we got going on in Iran and other places matters a lot to me.
You can speak to healthcare and military issues in a really important way, in a really intimate way, because of her. I'd like to interview her at some time. She sounds fascinating and super.
Once you talk to her, you don't want to talk to me anymore.
I bet. Where'd you guys meet?
We met at church in Boston. She was in med school at Harvard. I was at grad school at MIT.
Ugh.
Yeah, but we met at church. Okay, I got to say.
Sorry, I was
We have the same birthday.
What?
I'm 1 year older. Yeah. And her maiden name is Jones.
What? Her maiden name?
I did the genealogy. I checked. We're not related.
Oh my God. You got to put that now that your opponent is going to definitely use that. He married his sister. Oh, that's hilarious. That's fascinating, though, about her background and your background and how it helps you speak to the issues. We were talking, just first of all, how did you win in Arkansas? It's Central Arkansas. I think there's 5 congressional districts or 4?
There are 4 congressional districts. This is Central Arkansas. That includes Little Rock, which Republicans heavily gerrymandered, by the way. But it was a decisive win. So in my primary, I got 94% of the vote, which said our base is together. And surprisingly, this is what really got folks. Normally, there's a gap between the number of votes that the Republicans get and the number of votes that Democrats get. And Democrats are usually below. French Hill and I, my opponent, got about the same number of votes in this primary. So it's a race.
It's a race. What are the issues? What are the issues? And, the dumb question that everybody asks is, how can you as a Democrat appeal to Republicans or people who don't identify with the political party? It's an easy question to a certain extent, but it's an important question. Yeah. And I feel like it's a different answer because it's a different country. Right now, it's a different country than it even was 6 months ago for a lot of reasons. Yep. But how do you win?
Yeah, well, so a couple things. One, it's important to note that what this White House is doing and what my opponent, French Hill, is allowing to happen or voting for is hitting everybody. Whether you're white, black, Democrat, Republican, college educated, non-college educated, folks across the district have said, I am stressed about access to healthcare and affordability of healthcare. I'm stressed about the fact that Arkansas is dead last in food security. So we are number 1 in food insecurity, meaning we have more people that go to bed hungry than any other state, and French Hill's doing nothing about it. So those issues transcend party affiliation. We're a big military district. And when I talk to folks, I'm a veteran spouse, I talk to other veterans, active duty military, they want to serve. What they don't want to do is go to a useless war. So these things transcend party.
Talk about that more. This invasion in Iran, I'm just going to say I don't think anybody really thought it would happen the way it has, and maybe it won't be more of a quagmire. Maybe we'll never send boots on the ground, put troops there. Maybe we'll pull back. Who knows? But the fact that they did it unlocks a Pandora's box of uncertainty, as we all know. How much of an issue has that become in the last week before the election?
In the last week, because, we were talking about something totally different last week. It was AI and the lack of guardrails on AI. Now, the fact that it's random, haphazard, there are no clear objectives. It has not been approved by Congress. And we don't know what the plan is to ramp up to do anything. Why are we there? And so I'm hearing that from folks across the district.
How old are you? Do you mind my asking?
No, I'm 49 years old.
Okay, so I'm 50. So I was in New York on 9/11. Yeah. And every day after was scary for months and years, really. And the run up to the Iraq War, they sold us that war. But they built it up on our fear. We had been attacked. Yeah. And that's how they were able to convince way too many people, in my opinion. I was never even remotely convinced, and I lost friends that day. This isn't that. Americans aren't worried about Iran. It's not anywhere near our list of concerns. They're more worried about trans girls than they are. And and frankly, it's not even a joke. They've sold that as a fear and other things way more, immigrants, way more than Iran. So how does this play?
Came out of nowhere.
Yeah. How does this play with your constituents, with the people that you have to convince to vote for you and your opponent?
They are not happy about it at all. Because again, folks who have kids in the military are like, wait a minute. We signed up to protect the country. We didn't sign up, 1, to protect another country, and 2, to just randomly go to war. And so look, here's what's fascinating about this. I told you I was at MIT. When 9/11 happened, I actually was in right by the nuclear facility on MIT's campus. But even more significantly, my master's thesis advisor was the one on the U.S. side who negotiated the Iran deal.
Wow.
Ernie Moniz was my master's thesis advisor.
Oh, wow. The JCPO, he was Secretary of Energy.
Yes, exactly. With the weird hair. And look, so I understand what he did and why he did it and how he did it. And to see that deal get ripped up and then them to turn around and complain, oh, Iran's trying to get nuclear weapons, there's a whole lot of conversation, but out of nowhere. And there's speculation about why it happened out of nowhere. But regardless of the speculation, I know the families I talk to here in the district are absolutely not happy. And I think that drove turnout.
I hope you're right, because there has to be some decent outcome of this. As you know, as a military spouse, less than 1% of Americans serve. And in our wars of choice, which all of them have been, in my opinion, since World War II, in all of those wars, I should say, in all of the wars in our lifetime, after Vietnam, there has not been a cost unless you actually served. There's no draft, there's no tax, there's no rationing, there's nothing. Go shop, enjoy your life. You know, as a military spouse, much better, but very few people do understand that. And so people have to stand up and vote at the least, right? Because apathy can't win.
Yeah. Apathy cannot win. And that's the national stuff. There are local issues that matter too. But when I tell you, again, folks are frustrated, but you want my kid to serve and possibly die while your kid gets to chill on a beach? Not cool.
No. Send your kid if you support this war. I fully support you sending your kid to Trump's wars, this psycho. Let me ask you about how the Epstein files had animated voters. I mean, what a weird thing for you, with all of your education and understanding of public policy and urban planning and all of it, religion and obviously physics, to have to deal with this crazy scandal. But you do have to deal with it. You do have to talk about it. You do have to answer for it. And you have to demand transparency. What do people ask you? How much do they care? And how much of an issue will it continue to be?
I think it's going to be an issue. I think people care a lot. And they care a lot because it's an issue of fairness. How is it that this class of folks, the Epstein class, gets to rise above accountability? And they do not like that at all. And for this district, it's actually very personal because one of the victims lives in this district. And she's been one of the more outspoken ones who's shown up. She was there when Pam Bondi did that, whatever we call it, the congressional hearing that Pam Bondi did. She was there.
Oh, that.
She is in the district. Yes, that one where they held up their hands and they asked the question. Look, she's told us. She's tried to reach out. French Hill hasn't spoken with her. It's your own constituent, and you won't speak to them about how this issue matters and impacts.
Have you confronted French Hill, who's your Republican opponent, or like, that's a weird one. That's a real weird. Why would you not talk to her? Why would Pam Bondi not talk to her? I thought it was weird during that testimony when whoever it was like, look at them and apologize to them. Just look at them. You don't have to apologize. Don't make them. Just acknowledge them. Just meet with them. Who doesn't meet with the victims of a crime? Like, politicians always meet with the victims of a crime.
Always. But I think it's part of a larger ploy that we have to understand.
Go ahead.
The otherism and the division. If I can convince you that they are an other, they don't matter, then I don't have to pay any attention. I can bomb them. I can do whatever. And so there's been too much convincing that there's it as an other. But at the end of the day, we're all in this together. I mean, it's us versus some small group that has power.
Nowhere is that, maybe you'll argue another group, but more being done more to a group than it is to undocumented immigrants or immigrants in this country right now. Exactly. So my question to you is, I mean, the easy question to ask anybody for running for Congress is, do you think we should abolish ICE? Would you vote for abolishing ICE if you were elected? What do you think of these heavy-handed, to say the least, tactics that the federal government has been using in states and cities all over the country to arrest nonviolent, undocumented people who have been here? Everybody knows the types of stories that we're seeing play out. What do you say?
It's absolutely crazy. Number one, I think people have this image or this understanding that ICE has been around since the founding of the country. It hasn't. We certainly need customs and immigration enforcement, 100%. What we don't need is people coming into our communities, masked up, snatching folks out of their homes, shooting people in the middle of the streets, and doing it all on a budget that's more than the Marines budget. So that is very, very problematic. Look, I think they are absolutely wrong. I think we don't need ICE in this form right now, 100%. So I would support getting rid of it in this form right now. Because, again, what we're seeing is that how is it making us safer? It's not. How is it making our communities better? It's not. And if you're not making us safer and making our communities better and making this country stronger, then what are we doing?
My guess is that undocumented immigrants live right there in the 2nd District of Arkansas, like every other district in every state of America. My second guess is they are part of the social fabric of that district, doing really important work what we called during the pandemic essential work. So what do people in your district think about them?
Yeah, so you talk to farmers and they are hurting badly because their workers are now gone. They won't come in. And so 1 in 3 farms are at risk of bankruptcy in Arkansas. All because of the combination of this. I don't know. It's not immigration policy. It's just, I don't know what it's called. Meanness, malice, it's hatred combined with tariffs. That combination is causing our farmers to be destroyed. And we're seeing it in communities locally as well that used to be vibrant, and now people are in hiding.
There is no special interest that wants these people to be kicked out of the country. I think I just lost Chris's picture, but you still there, Chris? Oh, there he is.
Yeah, I'm here.
You disappeared and came back for some reason. Anyway, I got to ask you about one more important
the wormhole.
One more important question, which is healthcare, which I'm sure everybody cares about in your district. Like you said, your wife is a surgeon. You mentioned farms going out of business. There could be rural hospitals going out of business as well. What are you hearing about what are people's concerns about healthcare and health insurance in the 2nd District of Arkansas, and what would you do if you go to Congress?
Yeah, like you said, it's personal to me. My wife sees the impact of rural hospitals closing because they come to her emergency room. And we went across the district and talked to folks in all the 8 counties in the district. The number one thing, one of the top things that came up was access and affordability to healthcare. And here's why it matters extra in Arkansas. Arkansas was the only southern state to vote to expand ACA, the Affordable Care Act. As a result, we did not see hospitals closed in our rural areas. In fact, they became vibrant. And now, because of votes that French Hill took to cut Medicaid and not fund the hospitals, now we're at risk of serious hospital closures. And all it's going to do is bring people to the emergency room, which means we're going to have to pay for it anyway.
Indeed, we're going to have to pay for it anyway. And that is where our conversation with future Congressman Chris Jones, Dr. Chris Jones, has to end, unfortunately, because we lost his feed. Something happened to the internet, and I couldn't hear him, and I couldn't see him. I called him after. We finished up just privately and made an agreement to talk again really soon. Dr. Chris Jones for Congress. Chris Jones for Congress.com. Go donate. And I'm real happy to have gotten to connect with him. Also, thank you to Jonathan Larsen. Thanks again to Salil. I think that's 3 thanks, brother, to you in one show. And thank you for listening and for supporting the show, especially if you're a Bumblebee listening all the way to the end. It is time to wrap it up. I hope to see you at tonight's Hangout, and we can celebrate John Carroll if he shows up, which he often does. He's the writer, creator of all of our music, Grammy Award-winning John Carroll. Happy birthday, buddy. JohnCarroll.org. Talk to you later.
Keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You got to stand up. That's right. You got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. You got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear and all you hear is a lie. So get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense and you stand up, stand stand up. Stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up. Stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up. They had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of a stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. Alright, we got to speak up, we got to reach up, and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up. Stand up. Got to stand up. Ooh, come on, just stand up. Everybody got to stand up in the darkest